Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and I am once again live here at SHOT Show from the Huxworks Safety Company booth, and I am going to record a wonderful episode for all of you, all about ammunition, because we talk about so many things, but do we actually know what the job of the bullet, the ammo that we're using, of what it's going to do? So I invited Seth Swerczek from the Hornady podcast, and he is a phenomenal human being and somebody who knows his stuff. Like, he's not just a talking head. He lives
Arguable.
it. Oh. So without further ado, Seth, brother, so good to have you on the show.
Yeah, Johnny, thanks for having me back on the show. Couldn't be happier. Escaped my booth for a little bit.
Yes.
It's actually kind of cool up here, elevated. I feel a little breeze. This is awesome.
Well, you know, Huxworks, beyond having an awesome booth, you know, they brought the biggest fan.
I guess.
I don't know. It's a bad dad joke. I do what I can. My students.
Your kids wouldn't appreciate it.
No, they don't get it. It's like, come on.
You tried.
Yeah. Anyways, I had a great time hanging out with you last night at the Horizon Firearms Hornady dinner, where you guys were talking about the deuces are no longer wild.
Right.
So the 22 Creedmoor is officially SAMI approved.
It is.
And we're going to be interviewing Derek from Horizon Firearms hopefully tomorrow. But if that doesn't go down, we're going to get that going on later on. So just real quick, background, what's your role at Hornady before we dive in? Because I know you're the host of the podcast, and you are a phenomenal podcast host.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So what's your role?
So the podcast is really almost nothing to do with my actual job. It's just morphed into, now that's part of it. But the real job is the PR guy. The official title is the communications manager. So that means I work with the communication outlets, mostly, you know, the endemic outdoor writer world. So, you know, all the hunting and shooting publications that you're familiar with. Peterson's Hunting, Guns and Ammo, you know, Ballistic, all of those titles that you're familiar with. My job is the technical liaison between Hornady products and the writers themselves and the companies that own those publications. I do work with some TV shows a little bit. I work with some YouTube personalities a little bit. So I do a bunch of that, but really anything communication-wise. And then on the non-endemic side, you know, if there's a TV reporter that comes to Hornady or somebody needs a tour like that, then that's my job as well.
Oh, awesome. Well, I can't wait to get a tour from you at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to give you one. It'll blow your mind to see what goes into making a bullet.
Yeah, I need to experience that soon. And you're only, what did we said, like 8 hours north of me down in Texas? Because you're up in...
We're in Grand Island, and I think it takes me like 11 hours to get to Dallas.
Okay.
So
I'm 1 hour west of Dallas, but depending on your angle. So,
yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's a boring drive, but it's not that far.
I mean, you could make it in a 48-hour trip. I could leave early, we could go have some fun.
Yeah.
And then I could make it back in time.
I've done it. I've done the Texas trip. It was more than 48 hours, but yeah, I burned down there, hit some turbulent weather as a rainstorm, and so that was pretty crazy. It took me 12 hours to get there. We hunted pigs that night. Did, you know, shooting guns and stuff that day, hunted pigs the next night, and then woke up after like 3 hours of sleep and drove 12 hours home.
Dude, can we do that again?
That sounds great. I'd be down to clown.
Okay. All right, shout out. We're gonna get Hornady down to Texas.
Let's do it.
Smash on it some stuff. All right, so take us through ammunition line. I actually, when I got into hunting, and I covered this on our very first podcast that we released, I think last May, where we covered this, but just for sake of catching everybody up, I started shooting Hornady 55 grain VMAX because I was an AR. Well, I'm a Second Amendment enthusiast prior to becoming a hunter. So AR, that was my round, and then that was what I used for coyotes. Then I stepped into, you know, a larger caliber, went into a AR-10 actually. That was my first hunting rifle, was the AR-10.
Hey, you can't beat that.
In .308. And I was like, well, I already am shooting Hornady VMAX. I might as well shoot a Hornady, and I chose SST.
Yeah, great option.
So that was what I stepped into. Kind of like I drank Coors Light was my first beer, and so I'm
naturally drawn.
Yes, I'm like, oh, I might as well go for a Coors Light.
You're a disciple.
Yes,
yeah, it's great.
So that's how Hornady ammo is for me. I
love it.
That, you know, that it popped my cherry for ammo.
Yeah. That's great.
So ridiculous.
Yeah,
Anyway, so that was my introduction. I always was told, you go on hunting forums or shooting forums, and it's like keyboard warriors, and everybody has an opinion.
Yeah, 10 people got 20 opinions.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't hunt with an AMAX. You can't do this. You can't, And I'm like, well, I thought a bullet was a bullet.
Yeah, not always true.
Yeah. Break us down. Hornady has so many different lines.
We do. And that's, really important. We have a lot of lines because every carpenter has a toolbox full of different tools. Everybody's used a screwdriver as a pry bar, but it's not a pry bar. It's nice to have a pry bar.
Right.
And, not everybody needs the 30-ounce framing hammer either, But you do want to have a good amount of tools, and that's why we make so many different products. So to pick a bullet, we really advise you to look backwards to what you want to do. So, I'm going hunting. Okay, look at the end result. Or I'm going shooting, let's say. What's your end goal? Are you hunting or are you target shooting? Okay, well, that splits you there. I need a hunting bullet or I need a match bullet. And then what's your accuracy expectations? Okay, well, if you need match accuracy in a hunting bullet, that's going to limit what hunting bullet options you have. How far away do I need the performance window to be? What velocity does this bullet need to be traveling to do the end goal? What kind of game am I after? And if you look at it from that backwards perspective, you can really back yourself into an easy choice. In our product lineup for hunting bullets specifically, really started with the Interlock, which is a copper jacket lead core bullet. And it's got an interlock rings that holds the bullet together. And for the bulk majority of hunting at traditional distances, that's an easy button. That works every time. The traditional exposed lead tip. If you want something a little more aerodynamic, but that same construction, the SST is a great option. Then when you look at bonded bullets, we still have a bonded line, although we don't support it that much because of some nuance there with bonded bullets that we can get into if you want. Monolithic bullets like our CX line, a little bit more weight retention, a little more rugged. And then in my personal opinion, my favorite bullet is the ELDX. You got a bullet that works at all ranges, near, far. Really if you're hunting anything in North America and most things anywhere else outside of, big dangerous game, we've got an ELDX bullet that'll do it for you.
Okay.
So really you can just walk yourself backward through the product line and align what your expectations are with the performance and make sure that the product you're selecting aligns with your expectations, because we get a lot of people that'll claim this bullet failed or I didn't expect this to happen, and it's like, well, you made the wrong selection. So
interesting. I was at a local sporting goods store in Texas, Academy Sports.
Of course.
And I was like, okay, I reload 55 grain VMAXs for 5.56, but at the same time, I don't want to always have to be like, oh crap, I didn't reload and I got a hunt coming up, or different things like that.
Right.
What can I just grab off the shelf that is a replica of what I'm shooting?
Yeah.
So, I was looking at the shelves like, okay, well, here's Hornady Black.
Yep.
It's all these different 55 grain VMAXs. I'm like, is it all the same?
Some of them are, but some of them aren't. Like in the black line specifically, you'll see a lot of cartridges and bullet weight combinations that are just standards. 55 grain in a 5.56, 62 grain in a 5.56, 75 grain in the 223, for example. But with the black line, it's called black, like America's gun, black guns, ARs, that kind of thing. Well, the ammo can work in any gun, bolt actions, pump actions, whatever. But for AR specific cartridges like the 223 that, share a lot of that, we'll actually measure port pressure on some of those ammunition SKUs in the black line to make sure that they're going to successfully run the gun, because there's kind of a balancing act. You got to get the pressure in the chamber, then you have to have a certain amount of pressure at the gas port to work the gun. So although you might see some similarities, there's a little more nuance to it sometimes.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I filmed a thermal episode with one of our mentees. Took a former Marine. Well, you're a Marine, aren't you?
Yes.
Never a former Marine.
Right.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I took him out on his very first hunt ever. It was a thermal hunt for hogs, and we got on this group, and it was the very first time that my Huxworks 7.62 titanium just got out of jail.
Oh, boy.
And I already had it mounted, but I didn't get a chance to, I had it sighted in, but I didn't get a chance to run the gun a lot prior. And so I screwed on the can and he smoked his first hog, but it stovepiped.
Sure.
Because the adjustable gas block needed to be turned down.
Yep.
Yeah, with the can on it.
Yep.
Because of the back pressure.
Right.
So I was like, dang it. Otherwise, he could have taken out quite a few. But that was a learning experience.
Yeah, for everybody.
And so that you're saying like that black line is specifically for the AR platform.
Yeah, and again, you can use it in everything, but in the black line specifically, we do measure port pressure, and we do that for a lot of things. You'll see, anything in the 223 world. We want to make sure that it's going to work because there's so many ARs out there.
Is accuracy the same across the board? So like you have, I was looking at the 22 Creedmoor. You got 80 grain ELDM and an 80 grain ELDX.
Yep.
Are those? Do I have to resight my gun in for those two different?
So specifically with that one, generally no, and generally they shoot same point of impact, which is really convenient. So that one's pretty nice, but that's not always a guarantee because barrels have attitude, and we can't always control that, but we certainly try to if possible. And there is different accuracy specifications for each different ammo line. So if you've got match accuracy expectations from factory ammo, then it needs to be labeled as match ammunition. Or Precision Hunter. The Precision Hunter and our match ammo is held to the same accuracy standard.
Okay.
And then there's kind of a gray area, like our black line, for example, where the ammo isn't held to our match standard. It's held to our hunting standard. But the bullets themselves, they have a separate standard when you're making just a projectile, and those are held to the match standard. So a lot of accuracy potential in factory ammo, which is amazing.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I was to ELDM, ELDX, in theory, now based what you just said, off the 22 Creedmoor, those are based similar. But I hunt with 6.5 Creedmoor, 143 grain ELDX.
Yeah.
The average hunter, not somebody who's like into ballistics and just totally geeking out on, well, you can't do this and that's not right. Like if someone grabs, I think it's 140 grain ELDM that you guys make.
Yeah.
If they grab that box off the shelf, like how much change is there really between that?
It depends. It depends on the lot number of the ammo because, propellants, we try to use the same propellants if we can every lot number, but that's not always a guarantee because it's been a hard time to get powder the last few years. So velocity could be different, and the bullets do drag differently. So you just have to test it. You just have to find out. I would say in that specific application, there is going to be a difference. Inside of 400 yards, probably not hugely noticeable, but past that, there certainly will be.
Okay, so they drag different. So their ballistic coefficient's different.
Yeah.
Because of those 3 grains.
Yeah. Well, it's the shape there is a weight component to drag. A heavier bullet will have generally a higher BC, but the shape is also a lion's share of the drag.
Because the shape has to be different because the weight's different in order to still fit that cartridge.
So in that example, the 143 ELDX is actually almost the same shape as the 147 ELD match, not the 140. So those would have a similar external drag just based on their shape, or what you call shape drag. And that drag, you're going to see the difference as a function of time. So how long is the bullet in the air? And the further away you shoot it, the longer the bullet's in the air. So inside of a quarter mile, you might not see much of a difference. You just have to test it and see. But past a quarter mile, when the bullet's got, velocity's bled off and it's in that air longer, you'll start to see that difference more and more and more as a function of time.
I'm putting you on the hot seat right here.
Here I am.
Is the heat shield tip all marketing?
No, not even a little bit.
Okay.
No, that's a real thing.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, that's a real thing. And not every polymer is as heat resistant. And it's kind of a slide rule of what will make that tip deform. You have to have a certain amount of muzzle velocity. Then you have to have a high enough BC. It's got to hang on to that velocity. And then it has to be warm enough in an ambient temperature setting for that melting to happen. And melting is an overstatement. It just reaches a point where it's pliable, and the resistance of the oncoming air will very lightly flatten
just a little bit.
Yeah, and it'll not do it the same way every time, so it becomes difficult to determine the drag. So bullets like our SST bullet, our VMAX bullet line, they don't hold on to velocity long enough. They reach the temperature to melt that plastic or deform it, but they don't hold on to the temperature long enough for it to actually work. And they, like I said, they bleed velocity because they have low BCs.
Interesting.
So that's why, like the ELDX, the CX, the new VMAX line, and the ELD VTs, they have that new heat shield.
Okay, so just because it's a red tip doesn't mean it's the heat shield.
Correct. And you can see the color difference if you look at an SST versus a ELDX or one of the new VT bullets. The ELDX, the VT are a deeper, almost more burgundy's not the right word, but a very deep
like blood red.
Yeah, versus an SST or a VMAX, which is a very bright, vibrant red.
Okay, and I'm starting to like have a mental picture and recall, and that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so no, it's not just marketing, and we can show you CD versus Mach curves. So CD is the drag coefficient, Mach being the speed of sound. So the drag versus the speed of sound, the curve, and you can see very clearly when a tip deforms, because the curve, which is weird, you read a CD versus Mach curve from right to left, which is weird, but it will be concave, and it'll peak at drag during the transonic region, and it'll drop back down. And an area where the polymer tip deforms, instead of being concave, it'll be very slightly convex for a very short amount of time, and then it'll go back to normal. So you can see it on a Doppler radar drag curve.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and that's not just Hornady bullets. I mean, that's industry-wide. If it's got a polymer tip on it, it might be subject to that aerodynamic heating.
Gotcha. Do you guys have that patented?
No. Not at all. No, I mean, there's bullets out there. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there's some polymer tip bullets out there that are heat resistant as well.
Okay, interesting. All right, so this year I've been killing some different animals. It's been a dry spell for me, but I got to Texas and everything came together finally, which I'm super proud of. Shot some hogs with SST. I shot some hogs with VMAX.
Yeah.
Just had to ear hole them a whole lot more.
Yeah. You keep it north of the shoulders and you're probably okay.
And then the ELDX for deer. Mm-hmm. Shot a buck at probably 120 yards this year and a doe at 90 yards using 143 grain ELDX. Double lunged the buck and a lot of blood after a while.
Yeah.
Not at first.
Right.
The doe, I high shouldered, pretty much spined it, just dropped.
Yeah.
And actually, hold on. I thought it was a doe. I'm even speaking incorrectly. It ended up being like a really small spike buck.
We've all done it. And it like you're out there meat hunting and you think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And you shoot a nubby and it's like, oh my gosh.
I had a tag for it. Like, thank the good Lord.
But depending on your state, there's a antler length restriction.
Yeah.
So you would have probably been okay.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, I shot a doe. Oh, wait, I got another buck. Okay. Anyway, so talk to me about these bullets.
Yeah.
So I know that from my experience that 143 grain ELDX is like a grenade on animals. At least that's my experience.
At moderate range, it certainly is.
Okay.
Yep. So to get into the ELDX specifically, you really have to look at how the bullet's constructed. So how it is constructed, the jacket is what makes the ELDX what it is. And a jacket on an ELDX will be very, very thick at the bottom. And, think of it like a teacup, if you will. So the base of that jacket, it might be 40, 50, or even 60 thousandths of an inch thick. And then as it comes up the side of the bullet, it'll taper from, 40, 50, 60 thou to 40 thou, 45 thou. And then as it gets closer to the nose, it'll taper as thin as 20 thousandths of an inch. So you have this tapered jacket, thinner at the front. And then it's got an interlock ring, which is a barb in the jacket that just gouges into the lead to help hold the lead. And that interlock ring is located about halfway up the bullet. So the reason we structure the bullet that way is at long range, extended ranges, when the velocity's bled off, to get that bullet to upset consistently, we have to have a thin jacket. Because if you make the jacket too thick, you can't open the bullet up. And bullets work as a function of expansion. We want that bullet to transfer the energy. You can have all the energy in the world, but if you don't deposit it into that animal, it's not really effective. So the thin jacket up front helps with that low impact speed. At close range, that jacket being thin, it will expand so rapidly that it shears off, which is good. The reason we want it to shear off is because we have a cleaner frontal diameter, and that bullet will penetrate in a straight line more often because it's not having that jagged, lopsided frontal diameter. So we want that material to get out of the way, and then we want that lead core to continue to expand, and then we want that to shear off. And so at close range or moderate ranges, say sub 250 yards, where you have a really efficient bullet, it's holding on to velocity, you're impacting with a lot of speed, what you generally see is incredibly dramatic expansion.
Gotcha.
Usually you'll find that bullet or that jacket on the offside shoulder without an exit, so that's generally why you don't see a ton of blood.
On a bear, I found
and bears don't bleed very often anyway. But
yeah, okay, but keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. So you'll usually find it sub 250, sub 300 yards, depending on your impact velocity. You'll find that bullet or that bullet jacket on the offside skin. Usually on a deer, you can feel it, like, oh, it's right there, and you can cut it out. And then as you approach that quarter mile and beyond range, generally that bullet being a little more controlled will hold a little bit more weight, and then generally you see an exit at the extended ranges. So that's one of the things that we fight as a marketing team, is getting our consumer to understand, if you're shooting an animal sub 250 yards with a bullet that works at 50 and at 750, don't be surprised if you don't get an exit. Like, I don't care what you're shooting.
So many people blame it on the caliber. They're like, oh, dude, you're shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor. Yeah, you can't do that.
Bleed more.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, it's all caliber specific. It's actually a lot to do with the bullet.
It is. The bullet construction and the velocity. Velocity is what makes bullets work. You know, a lot of people used to get hung up on energy. Oh, you need 1,500 foot-pounds for an elk and 1,000 for a deer. Well, that means almost nothing if the bullet doesn't work. And what makes a bullet work? It's velocity.
Interesting. Okay, so if I'm doing the majority of my hunting on a Texas deer lease, I have, depending on what blind I sit in, I have shots to 150 yards max, or I have one that I can reach out to 300 at the far edge. Okay. But what bullet do you recommend?
So this is a good question, and it really comes down to your personal preference, because I'll talk about two ends of this spectrum here, and in my opinion, the bullet that I would choose is probably our SST.
Okay.
The SST, known for like dramatic expansion. I mean, like, not V-match type explosiveness, but very dramatic expansion. And why I would want that at those traditional ranges, sub 300 yards, is that bullet is going to deposit so much energy. It's just ridiculous. And I personally am a high shoulder shooter, and if you put a dramatically expanding bullet into that high shoulder,
I mean, that's a massive wound.
You disrupt the electrical activity in the central nervous system through the spine, so generally you can get them to go unconscious. They drop right there. Plus you're going to do tissue damage, heart, lung. If in a properly placed shot, you might take the top off the heart, disrupt all the lung tissue, and shock the spine. It's win-win. And then if you do soft tissue shots, trying to preserve meat, you chuck one of those behind the shoulder, and that thing, in a microsecond, that animal will inflate to the size of a beach ball and then collapse back down, because that bullet's expanding so fast.
So choosing that, so I'm shooting a 165 grain SST out of the 308 for hogs.
Perfect.
So that is that's ideal.
I love it. I love the faster expansion, but I also know what to expect with that expansion. And the other side to that argument is some people really prefer an exit wound. I don't care. I want blood coming out of both sides. And if that's your gig, our CX bullet retains 95 to 99% of its weight. You want an exit wound, that will give you one. It is almost a guarantee. Those things penetrate like nobody's business.
Really?
Yeah, they penetrate really well. So if you're body shooting big hogs, the CX is a great option. In my opinion, the CX is the bullet for African Plains game.
Because similar to Texas, this is what I learned real quick, and this is a side tangent, but it all comes back into blood trailing.
Sure.
So, by the way, that alarm is just driving me nuts right now.
You know what? What are you going to
do? So what I learned, being a Western big game hunter, is you shoot an animal, whether it's a good shot, not a good shot, or whatever, animals will use the terrain to then help you track. Like, okay, it's not going to go uphill. It went downhill. It's going to go path of least resistance.
Yeah, they're lazy as we are, generally.
Right. Yeah, where's a creek bed? Where's an opening? Where's a game trail? And so trailing animals is a lot easier. When I came to Texas, everything's flat and everything's thick.
Oh, yeah.
And animals go anywhere and everywhere.
Yep.
And so I had to really learn how to step up my blood trailing game.
Yeah.
And so now I'm really reevaluating through this conversation. It's like, okay, what bullet do I actually need to be shooting for that type of hunt versus Western big game.
Yeah. So the CX is great for that. You get a hole coming out of both sides for the most part, and monolithic bullets thrive on velocity. So generally, you'll see slightly lighter for caliber, and you want to impact with as much speed as you can. Yeah, one of the things that the CX bullet doesn't do quite as good as a lead core bullet is that, like, when you shock the central nervous system, you get that animal going unconscious. The CX expands just a little bit slower, and so you don't generally get as much of that hydrostatic shock as you do with a lead core bullet. So for animals in the deer and antelope size, hunting on private property where you want to keep them in your boundary, a lead core bullet, in my opinion, is still my go-to.
Okay, interesting. What is the American whitetail line?
American whitetail is really just a way for the consumer. Our marketing effort was the consumer go to the store. Oh, I'm hunting whitetail, the most hunted, big game species in America. That's a no-brainer. If they're not familiar with the Hornady line and all of the tools in our toolbox, but they see that's a no questions asked kind of purchase. And it uses exclusively our interlock bullet, which is tried and true all over the world for 75 years. So it's just easy.
It's exclusive to that.
Yeah, you use that iconic bullet, which is a great bullet, and kill anything you want with it. And in America's favorite cartridges that are primarily getting used for, whitetail deer. And again, you can use it on anything, but we wanted a simple way to convey to our consumer, if whether they're devout Hornady disciples and they know our whole product line inside and out, or if they just go to the store because, I need ammo to go on a hunt, they see that it's an easy purchase.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, man, you are very good at holding this information. You blow me away. Like, dude, welcome. This is Seth. He's an encyclopedia, everything Hornady. You're talking about velocity.
Yep.
You're like, dude, velocity kills. So when you are choosing, let's use a 308 as an example. Mm-hmm. Do I go 165 or do I go 150? Because there's a big difference between those two.
Can be.
I personally have always felt like go with the heavier bullet for your caliber, but it's not right. Like, what are your thoughts?
There's no right or wrong answer. It's kind of personal preference. Some of it's gun preference. Like I said, every barrel's got an attitude. You might have to find what it shoots the best. Generally, what I like to do is pick a bullet with my expectations in mind. And if I'm hunting whitetail deer at traditional ranges, generally I'll go, in that example, maybe 150 grain bullet, because I'm going to pick up the speed, a little flatter trajectory, a little more dramatic expansion, and I know what to expect with that. If I was hunting, say, mule deer, black bear, something like that, where, one, just a little bit bigger animal, and two, hunting a black bear, even if it's 250 or 300 pounds, which, you get mule deer that size, it's, in my opinion, better to go with a little heavier bullet, because like a furred up black bear, you might not be able to put it right exactly where you want it because it's hard to distinguish where you want it.
Right.
So for that reason, I generally go a little bit heavier, but there's really no wrong answer. And I keep saying this, but it's important to align your expectations with the bullet performance. And a big shout out here to our tech staff. Most folks don't know, but Hornady has a team of 8 guys that answer the phone Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And if you have a question about our product line or choosing a twist rate or a reloading technique, tip, whatever, these guys are product experts. They all hunt, they all shoot, they all reload. Most of them shoot competitively. You can call us up, 800-338-3220, extension 3, and they will talk you through everything we're talking about right now.
Awesome.
Yep.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That was really awesome. Okay, so we've covered some different lines. We've talked about bullets. We've talked about velocity. It seems like there are always these Wildcat cartridges. What's the new hot round?
Yeah.
Like, do I do this? Like for the longest time, I wanted to get a 6.5 Grendel.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can hunt big game with it out of an AR-15, which is my favorite, and like that's pretty badass.
It is 100%.
But then I didn't have any money and I didn't get a 6.5 Grendel, and now there's other cartridges out there.
Yep.
What's up? Like, is it just constant innovation, or is there some stuff where it's like, no, this is it? This is...
Well, yes and no. There's always constant innovation. That's what we do. That's our hallmark. And in the world of 6.5 Grendel, the 6 ARC is really big, and that one was really, designed with a very specific military group in mind and in conjunction with, but there's plenty of, commercial use as well. I think the tool in the toolbox reference applies to cartridges as well. And one thing that I'm trying to get our consumers to understand is, like, every time we come out with a new cartridge, it doesn't make any previous cartridge less good. The cartridge is just as good as it ever was.
That's a very good point.
This new cartridge might be a little more refined. And so the Grendel is outstanding. You know, with the 6.5 bullet diameter, you get some heavier weights. It kind of stifles the cartridge from a velocity standpoint. So there's a trade-off there. With a 6 arc or a 22 arc or any other wildcat that lives in that space. So I think each situation dictates if there is that's the one. And, that may not be the case for, that might not be that the 6 arc or the 6.5 Grendel is the right answer, but there are use cases where it is the right answer.
Yeah.
I think it's just important to give people options and continue to innovate, because in the wildcat space, you can have something that is the best thing in the whole world. Oh my gosh, this is so great. And if it's a wildcat and custom, well, it's really great for you. And you only.
Doesn't mean other people are going to shoot it well.
And you rely on somebody else building the same custom stuff you built to get the performance. And so the innovation on cartridge design is really so that anybody can go to Sportsman's Warehouse and buy a 6.5 PRC or a 7 PRC or a 6 arc or whatever, and they don't have to have a custom gun. They don't have to buy and load custom ammo. They can get factory off-the-shelf ammo, a factory rifle, and get that same type of custom world performance. And so that's those small little refinements that make new cartridge design important.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this year, 2024, Hornady came out with your VT line.
Yeah.
What is it?
So the VT line is pretty unique. We love to shoot stuff far away. That's really fun. So what helps you hit stuff far away? It's way funner to hit what you're aiming at. So
that is
we
true.
like long ogive, long boat tail, high BC bullets. Well, in the varmint world, the traditional varmint bullets generally don't have the best drag characteristics. So we wanted something really high BC. Well, generally you get heavier weight. So what we did was we actually reduced the lead core height inside the bullet, and that moves the center of gravity rearward in the bullet. It does two things for us. Number one, it helps with a little bit of dynamic stability. If your listeners have heard the bullet goes to sleep, excuse me, that helps with that bullet to go to sleep faster. So generally that can help dispersion. And then two, it puts a big air cavity up front. So you have a bullet that absolutely comes apart like a hand grenade on a varmint. So you get the shape drag benefits of those really long bullets. It's lighter weight, so you can drive them a little faster muzzle velocity wise, and then they still absolutely destroy. They anchor coyotes at extended range. So you get that coyote that's coming to the call, everything's groovy, you're all excited, and then he sits down at 550 yards,
yes,
and he stares through your soul and barks. You got way more chance of hitting them with a VT bullet than a traditional varmint bullet because of the better drag characteristics.
Yeah, because the VMAX is flat on the bottom.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but most.
Okay, 55 grain is what I'm pulling from in that regard. So, okay, and just better bullet.
It's just a better bullet. It's a more specific tool for a specific job. You don't have to use the screwdriver as the pry bar. You can just use the pry bar. And that bullet is great. And it's got match application too. We hold it to our match accuracy standard. The jacket is drawn in the same way that we draw our match jacket. So hyper accurate and explosive when it gets there.
What caliber are you releasing those in?
So the VTs are available in a 22 caliber, a 6, a 6.5, and a 30. Our initial offerings are just those four: 62 grain in 22 cal, a 80 grain in 6 millimeter, a 100 grain in 6.5, and the 30 cal's a 174.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they're big, beefy bullets. From you look at them, and you're like, there's no way. Like a 62 grain, 22 caliber bullet. You have an idea of what that looks like. It's not the same. This is the same length as like a 75 grain match bullet.
So these are, you said more of a varmint bullet.
Yep, varmint match kind of hybrid there.
But guys that are shooting those larger calibers, they could still put this in there. But explain that to me, because I feel like this is where people might get convoluted with like.
So like the 6.5 Grendel's a good example. You put a 120 grain bullet in a Grendel, and you're only doing 2,400, 2,500 at the muzzle. Well, if you put a bullet that has very similar drag to that 120, but it only weighs 100 grains, now I can juice that velocity up, flatten the trajectory, less wind drift, and it's still going to have plenty of authority on a furred up coyote, let's say, at those extended ranges. So, even in the 6.5 Creedmoor with that 100 grain bullet, you just get the muzzle velocity up, which is great, and you can still shoot matches with them. Like I said, they are hyper accurate.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have yet to. Are you guys releasing those in full cartridges as well?
We have a brand new line of ammo just around the VT bullet, and that's called the V-Match line of ammunition, available in the new 22 ARC, the 6 ARC, the 6.5 Grendel, the 6.5 Creedmoor, and the 6 Creedmoor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'm gonna have to get some. I got a couple 6.5 Creedmoors that I need to make sure I spit those out.
Send me an email. I'll make sure you get some. It's fun to shoot.
Okay, I love it. Question for you on this. You shoot bullets all the time. You understand this concept.
Yeah.
You said that you like to shoot things at longer distances.
I do.
Tools for the job. What are your calibers? What are your specific calibers that you prefer to take a field? I know your history with the gun and your dad and all that stuff.
I love a lot of things. I shoot a ton of 6 ARC. I shoot PRS, not as active as I once was, but I shoot a 6 ARC in a PRS rig. So I shoot that a lot. I shoot the new 22 ARC now. Over the last 6 months or so, I've been really shooting that a lot, and that's become one of my quick just grab go-tos. I used to shoot the 6 Creedmoor quite a bit, but the barrel life for the competitive world is just, I was pulling tubes every 1,000 rounds, and it's not a lot of shooting in the precision rifle world. Right. So I don't shoot the 6 Creedmoor a ton. I still shoot a 6.5. That's my workhorse, is my 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm training, I'm practicing, going out banging steel. I always have a 6.5 Creedmoor barrel. And then on the hunting side, I have a lightweight short 6.5 PRC, but I'm always going to grab the 7 if I can. The 7 PRC for me is awesome. I don't own a 300 PRC at the moment. I will build one here shortly, just as a, that's the 2-pound sledgehammer. Yeah,
okay, so that's my question. 7 PRC, 300 PRC.
I'm going 7 every time, unless I'm specifically like brown bear hunting. Okay, I'm gonna take the 300 because it's the right hammer, it's the bigger hammer. But for the hefty majority of hunting that I do in any of the ranges that I'll hunt at, the 7 PRC, it's got about 30% less recoil than the 300, a little bit flatter trajectory, and just as much velocity to make the bullets work.
And what grain bullet are you pushing on?
I shoot the 175 ELDX.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Dude, there's so much to just geek out on all this.
I'm good at spending money. It sounds like it.
We need more of it in our pockets, man. I go to the store and I'm looking at the prices of ammo. Yeah. Like, you work for an ammo company?
Yeah.
Do you still, on the retail side of it, go out and be like, I can't believe this is what
I do,
and
it hurts. And Hornady has kept our prices considerably lower as far as price increases than a lot of the competitors have. But the lead market, there's a lot of lead in the bullet, and lead in the U.S. is completely recycled. There's no new lead mining. So we're on a fixed amount of lead in this country. And so you see the lead prices climb. And then through COVID, you had boat sales, RV sales, things that had multiple batteries on them consuming lead. So lead went up, copper went up, the raw material cost just goes up. And it's a fluctuating market, and we do our best. We've absorbed several price increases before we start to incrementally push ours up. But everything's more expensive. Powder's more expensive, which is a huge one in the ammo side. So it is crazy. Not that long ago, a box of match Creedmoor was $20 a box.
Right.
Not so anymore.
So for the guys who don't have a lot of money and they're like, I can only get 1 box of ammo or maybe 2, or they're shopping in states where they have restrictions on how much they could buy or different stuff like that. How much does the batch number impact the ammo accuracy from box to box and how that goes?
Sometimes not at all, because a lot of times we try to use the same components if we can, lot to lot. Not always the case. And I've said it before, every barrel has an attitude. So sometimes you might get a factory ammo that's got a propellant in there that your barrel doesn't like. So sometimes there can be a big disparity, and we try to minimize that as best we can. They're held to the same standards in the factory. So we use the same standards test equipment, and they're held to the same standard lot to lot. But your individual barrel may make that choice for you. But again, in a perfect world, we select the propellant, for example, for each SKU, and we try to use that same propellant for every SKU, regardless of lot number. But again, sometimes we can't always do that.
What do you think about this idea of imperial numbers versus metric?
Couldn't care less. I just want the tool. Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to me. No, I just want the tool.
Yeah.
There's some things that are just easier to say, like 284 PRC is just more of a mouthful than the 7 PRC.
Yeah.
So sometimes, makes a little more sense for me. But like I said, I just want the tool to do the job.
Yeah, right. I get it. Here's a question I have not covered with you before, and it comes to sidearm.
Yeah.
We hunt. If you're an archery hunter, you carry a pistol. I don't know. Even if you're a rifle hunter, you can still carry a pistol or whatever. Yeah. What are you putting in your handgun?
So I like to carry what's appropriate for where I'm at. And in just a semi-automatic handgun, critical duty is usually my go-to, although we have the handgun hunter line that's got a monolithic bullet, a little more rugged. So for the 10 millimeter guys, that's a great option. And then when you go to there's brown bear in the area and I'm carrying, a big revolver or something, I still go with the XTP. You can't beat it. It's just a classic option with plenty of stopping power.
What's the difference between XTP and critical defense and all that?
So the XTP started as a traditional jacketed hollow point. That was really the founder of the feast for jacketed hollow points for Hornady. And so it has an exposed hollow cavity. So you get great terminal performance, just a reliable bullet. Generally, you can get some that are really heavy for caliber. And bullets like the critical duty have a polymer that is inserted so they don't clog. And they're designed to be barrier-proof bullets, like the FBI protocol for penetration. Our critical duty conforms to that and defeats those barriers. So a really advanced technology in regard to that bullet design. But the XTP is, like I said, just a classic.
Okay, interesting. So I had an experience this last summer, actually on that hog hunt with that new mentee. We ended up, another hog got shot, and we walked up on it, and it started charging us.
Yeah.
I had to pull my sidearm.
Yeah, let him have it.
Pop on it and dropped it. But I was like, okay, am I carrying the right type of ammo for doing that?
Yeah, handgun hunter is a no-brainer. That one's, like I said, those bullets are super effective. But the critical duty, although it wasn't designed for that, the critical duty performs really well in that world as well.
What about your subsonic ammo? Specifically for, actually, let's cover rifle and pistol, but I'll start with the pistol because we're on that topic. I just got my Huxworks Rad 45 out of jail.
Yeah.
I got a lever action to put it on, but I also have my sidearm to put it on. And I see Hornady subsonic 135 grain 9 mil and 147 grain.
I think it's just 147.
Okay, something like that.
Yep.
Your critical defense versus your subsonic speeds are different. I get that, but the bullet is different.
Is different. Yep. The XTP that's used in the subsonic line for pistol ammo, again, designed specifically for that velocity realm, and it has that traditional hollow point. Whereas the critical duty, that polymer plug, so for personal defense, if you're shooting through something like heavy clothing, it won't clog. And if you clog a hollow point, it can fail to expand. So the critical defense, like I said, very purpose-built for shallower penetration and uniform expansion, even through something like leather or denim, things like that.
Interesting. Yep. Okay. And then for the hunting side of it, you guys make subsonic rounds for people that want to hunt subsonic.
Yep. And the big thing there is transfer the energy you have. So even at low velocity, that bullet is purpose-built to expand. So when you expand, you have a rapidly accelerating diameter of your frontal diameter, plus you're transferring the energy. They actually kill incredibly effective. And it seems weird because it's so quiet, but I'm telling you, and it's super low recoil. For pigs, for deer-sized game, it's actually really, really effective.
Have you hunted subsonic yet?
I have, yes. The 190 sub X out of 300 blackout is scary effective. Like the terminal performance is very pronounced, and like when it goes off, you think your gun's broken because there's no recoil, there's no sound. It's just awesome.
Wild. Yeah. You running that out of an AR platform or a bolt?
Of course. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, the bolt gun's cool because there's no sound of the action, but hunting at night, I love the semi-auto.
Yeah. The follow-up shots. Yeah. All that. What's on the horizon for Hornady?
Keep innovating for sure. That's one of those things that we have a R&D team that we are getting after it as far as the R&D goes. So I can't speak to products that are in the works yet, but trust me to say there are new cartridges, there are new bullets, there are new designs that we're pushing, and we're looking forward to the future.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
Brother, I'm so honored to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being a part of the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're an amazing guest as always, and we got to actually plan something.
Oh yeah, let's get it on.
Get on a hunt. I actually just recorded recorded an episode with Jared Newman of Hunt League, and we're going to be starting a Soul Seekers League within the app Hunt League.
Okay.
And I'd love to get Hornady on board to, it's kind of like fantasy football where it comes to, there's the championship at the end, there's rewards and,
Come over to the booth, let's talk about it.
Okay, perfect. Brother, thank you. Guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, learned a lot, got to understand all about bullet selection and choice for the game in which you're doing and the purpose and how you're going about it. Remember that mentorship is conservation and you can never outgive good, as hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. I'm Johnny Mack, Seth Swerczek at Hornady. Be blessed, freedom on, and as always, stay soulful.